Interfaith's great, but YouTube's better. Okay, so I'm here this evening with Yosef. Yosef, do you want to tell my audience what your YouTube channel is?
My YouTube channel's relatively new name is called MidEast American, and it was previously known as Omedia Shar, but I decided to make something that is more easily rememberable to English speakers.
And now, if any of my Muslim viewers are watching, and you remember seeing a Jew making a video about the names of Allah or prostration in prayer and how similar Judaism and Islam can be, and in fact they are, that will have been Yosef's video.
May the peace of God and His compassions and blessing be upon you. In this video I want to talk about Allah, the God of Abraham. Often among Christians and Jews, I hear opposition against use of the term Allah in reference to the Creator, the God of Abraham. On the basis of several misunderstandings, what I would like to show, first of all, is the similarity. The Hebrew name for God, one of them, it simply means deity. In Hebrew, this term isn't used exclusively for the Creator, but it means deity, is Allah. The Aramaic is Allah, but without emphasizing the L. Hence this one L without a dot. Allah. It can also be pronounced Allah. The Arabic word is Allah. The difference is mainly the elongation of the L. Allah as opposed to Allah. You can find this three-letter spelling of the Hebrew name of God, Allah, in the Hebrew Bible several times in reference to the Creator, the God of Abraham.
And so we're going to just do a little free-flowing conversation. It's the first time I've really met Yosef. I've been a big fan of his work for a long time, probably as long as he's had the channel, which is maybe older than some of my viewers.
Thank you.
And behind us is a site which is incredibly holy for the three Abrahamic faiths. It's Har Habayit, or Haram al-Sharif, Masjid al-Aqsa, Kubur al-Sakra, the Temple Mount. So what could be a more appropriate setting for a video for one person that's done more to unite Jews and Muslims on YouTube than probably any other person?
Wow. That would be a big honor if that's true.
I can't tell you the amount of times I've encountered Muslims in Britain, which is a long way from Israel and a long way from America, the two places you've probably called home. I can't tell you the amount of people who've told me they know that Jews prostrate in prayer because they've seen it on YouTube.
And I'm not the only one. But I just have to say, although I find it to be a very beautiful aspect of the historical observance of the Jewish faith, also in Rabbinic Judaism, not only in Karaite Judaism. But despite that, I just want to say that I do not think that it is the massive, super fundamental that it's often made out to be.
Just to elaborate on that a little bit more, some people make prostration a big deal. Are you talking about prostration? Or
yeah, I am. Yeah. But I'm referring more to the response that I've seen from Muslims in criticism of the vast majority of even religious Jews who do not actually prostrate onto the ground.
I hear that a lot. You'd be amazed at how many Muslims I meet that tell me that Musa, alayhi salam, he used to prostrate. And they quote the Torah and use it against Orthodox Jews today. But prostration has never been a central part of Jewish life. It is just an aspect of prayer. And there are many ways that Jews can connect to our Creator, to Allah, to Hashem.
Right.
And for all my Jewish viewers that are currently spitting their coffee over the screen and screaming, we don't prostrate, that's what the Muslims do. There's a Yemenite community, and various other communities have the tradition of prostration. Most no longer do it, certainly no longer do it in public. But up until very recently, many, or certainly some Sephardic or Eastern communities prostrated during prayer. And so I don't want this video to be about prostration. Check out Yosef's channel and you'll see loads about that. Read the comments. It's actually really interesting.
I'm sorry. I'm certainly not saying to all the Jewish viewers that your prayers are any less acceptable to the Creator if you're not prostrating. It's one of the I think 5 things that the Rambam mentions in the laws of prayer, that if you neglect to do them for whatever reason, it doesn't invalidate your prayer. And that's actually true also according to Islam, if something's preventing you from doing that, which of course would include ignorance.
But I didn't want to make this a super Jewish video. I wanted to actually focus more on something that we've both done. So in a past life, or in a current life even, I run something called Judaism-Islam.com, and that looked to promote the commonality between Jews and Muslims. And I sincerely felt, that the best way for Jews and Muslims to bridge the gap and to improve our relations was to promote the commonalities between our two faiths. There are so many examples of where our practices, our rituals, our prayers, even down to different what Muslims would call ayahs, or that we would call psukim in the Quran, verses, thank you, verses in the Quran, a verbatim almost from the Mishnah, from the Torah. The religions are so similar. And I thought, if only I could promote those commonalities, we'd create an air of respect and tolerance. And truthfully, I think that's worked. I can't tell you the amount of Muslims I meet that tell me how similar our two faiths are. I can't tell you how many Muslims tell me that Jews and Muslims, we've always got along. Jews and Muslims, we're the seed of Ibrahim alayhi salam, of Abraham Avinu. But there's always a caveat, there's always a but, and that is, we don't get along with the Zionists. And Zionism is the elephant in the room. And Jews and Muslims that are involved in interfaith always, without fail, overlook and purposely choose not to speak about Zionism. If you've ever been to any interfaith event, they say we leave politics out of it. We're only going to talk about our religions. We're only going to talk about Judaism. We're only going to talk about how Muhammad had Jewish wives. We're only going to talk about how the Jews rose to some of the highest positions in Al-Andalus. We're only going to talk about the golden ages of Jewish and Muslim relations. But we're going to categorically, purposely ignore Zionism. And Zionism, Jews living in their ancestral homeland, in the place where they are only indigenous, the only people to ever have a sovereign state which was based out of this land, there's certainly in existence today, are the Jewish people. There have been different Muslim caliphates, but they've been ruled from abroad, from Turkey, from various other caliphates, and they weren't based here. So we are indigenous. You can't move 2 steps in this land without encountering Jewish presence. And that is, for me, the ikka. That is the biggest problem. So I made a conscious effort to move away from interfaith and focus on improving the name of Zionism amongst my Muslim friends within the Muslim community in the UK and further, to try and make Zionism as acceptable to Muslims as Judaism. It doesn't mean you have to accept everything the Israeli government does. It's just, for me, you have to accept that Jews, like Arabs, have a right to live in this land.
So here you're actually getting into what the term Zionism does or does not mean.
Yeah.
And that's part of the crux of the whole conflict. I mean, certainly some Muslims hate or will justify murder against even civilian Jews because of their rejection of Zionism, when in fact, if they had a clearer picture, they may reject such actions. Not that it wouldn't be justified in any case. But then you may have other Muslims that would still have no problem and would advocate murdering Jews or any other civilians. But it would certainly have an impact. So we need to define what Zionism means and what it doesn't mean. I mean,
and what is your working definition that you use with Muslims, that you use for yourself, of what a Zionist is? Who is a Zionist? What is a Zionist?
So I would say, I don't like saying that my opinion is, don't want to get too politically correct here, but I would say, at least with regard to what I've been exposed to and learned, there are 2 historically valid definitions of Zionism. Okay? One is simply the concept that the Jewish people have a right to self-determination and self-rule, regardless of where that may be. And that's obviously not very popular. That's not what we refer to. And then there's the other type of Zionist, which is also historical, and far more historical than the term Zionism itself. Sort of how like dinosaurs are more historical than the word dinosaur. A lot of times people jump on this issue that Zionism was invented by some atheist, secular, God-hating Jews in the 1800s. Okay, the term may have been created at that time, but certainly not the concept. So that's why it's so important. The second definition of Zionism is the same as the first, but with the added detail that the homeland of the Jewish people is here in the Levant, in what is Israel, and actually it's a little bit beyond that, but the Jewish people aren't demanding that regardless of whatever propaganda you may be exposed to. So that's the second definition. Whereas, of course, my impression is, and even if it's wrong, bear in mind that this is the impression I've gotten from Muslims, okay? My impression of what most Muslims think is that Zionism is an ideology whereby a foreign people, or even if you say we're not foreign, even if you say we're indigenous, that's less of the focus here. My impression is that most Muslims have the view that Zionism is an ideology which seeks to basically commit genocide against whoever is racially inferior to the Jewish people. Okay, and this is, of course, I'm not saying this is what Jews believe Zionism is, because that's absolutely absurd to anyone who's had substantial interaction with Jews. But that's certainly been my my impression. So if it's wrong, I mean, clearly 1.6 something billion Muslims in the world, there's bound to be more than one opinion as to what Zionism is, even among Muslims. But that's the general impression that I've gotten. They seem to think that Zionism is Jewish superiority, racial superiority, that's manifested by genocidal action against non-Jews living here, i.e. Muslims.
Just to add into that, many of the laws which are to do with protecting people of the book within a Muslim state, they're based on religious laws found in Judaism of how you protect the minority populations that are living in a Jewish state. So the religious Jews, from the inception of Judaism, have a mechanism to protect the ethnic minorities, the religious minorities, the people who are living within the state. The secular Jews, similarly, so the 19th century Zionists, they also put huge provisions in place to protect the minority populations. An example would be, I think it's Ben Gurion said that not one right will be given to the Jews that isn't given to the Arabs,
right,
who are living there and had lived there, many of them for centuries. So both secular and religious Zionism, or the Jewish laws that govern this land, have huge provisions to protect minorities.
Right.
There's no genocide, it's the complete opposite. They go to huge levels, huge extents to protect minority communities. And in your experience, what's the biggest or the most effective thing Jews and Muslims can do to overcome the gulf that's formed between us in the last 100 to 70 years?
All right, well, assuming that we're talking about Muslims who are interested in overcoming that gulf, and I know they exist, but the question is how many. So I would say that one of the most important things for them to do is to first acknowledge that there is a problem in the Islamic world. If you can't acknowledge that problem, the problem will not be solved. Of course there are issues in the Jewish world. Of course there are problems in American society. We're not denying that. But each person has to be willing to admit to the problems in their own communities, even if they don't condone those particular problems, but you know if it's in your community. You can look at my videos and you can see that I have bluntly discussed problems in the Jewish community, and I'm hated for it even among Jews. Do likewise, because if it's for a proper goal, if you really want to see change, you're not going to do it by continually doing what we say in English, preaching to the choir. So that's what I would say. Focus on your own community. Learn about the Jewish people. Learn about Israel. Obviously, it doesn't mean condone or you have to condone every policy, but learn about the so-called facts that every Muslim knows, and then go and talk to Muslims who you know are not already you know, firmly given over to a certain ideology. Don't waste your time with those people.
And what can Jews do to improve the relationships with Muslims? Because our backyard isn't perfect either. We've got sort of our own mess up, as you said before.
Right.
There are problems within our own camp. What can we do to improve relations with Muslims?
There's plenty of interfaith organizations here in Israel, but like I said before, I don't think that's really where you need to focus, because any Muslims you're going to meet at some sort of interfaith function is already on the right path, most likely. I would say make YouTube videos. That's one of the biggest things that'll give you the furthest reach. Learn Arabic. Arabic is extremely beneficial and meaningful to the Jewish faith as well. Most Jews have no clue about that.
I mean, just to add to that, if you want to study the Rambam in his own language, you have to be
Right.
able to read Arabic.
Some of the most popular Jewish books are written in Arabic, and even your greatest rabbi is relying on a translation to Hebrew. And they never teach this in your average yeshiva, but it's a fact. So I would say learn Arabic, at least even to some extent, and it can, I mean, it'll elevate the level of respect that they'll have for you. They'll see, oh, you're not just some ignoramus who's just spewing ignorance. You actually have some interest in trying to understand us. And but make YouTube videos also, and not about stupid stuff. You know, don't spread the nonsense. Learn.
And if you can't do YouTube, write articles. If you can't write
Right.
articles, speak on radio. Like there's
Right.
always, it's about reaching as large an audience as possible, because one-on-one interactions are great.
But they're limited.
They're limited,
Right.
and that conversation ends at that person. Whereas media we have at our fingertips today is phenomenal. And I just want to really stress what you said about interfaith. That's completely my experience. Interfaith in the UK is a vicar, a rabbi, and imam getting together, eating cucumber sandwiches, and talking about how lovely their religions are and how similar they are. Then they go away. And these people.
While their
already-
congregation members are killing
Yeah.
each other in the background.
No one's speaking to the jihadist who's going
Right.
out to strap a bomb, and no one talks to him. Like he's miles away, and it's pointless preaching to the choir, preaching to the people that are at an
Right.
interfaith because they've already
Right.
converted. Yeah, so just really stress that. Interfaith's great, but YouTube's better.